You're watching Spectrum News 1. It's 12 o'clock.
Right now on Spectrum News 1, as Sally makes its way across the southeast, find out how it will impact the Carolinas. Our meteorologists are keeping an eye out for any severe weather that could happen this afternoon. Time is running out to send in your 2020 census. Our state actually is falling behind other states. Find out what officials are doing to make sure all of North Carolina is counted. And for the third week in a row, the Department of Labor reported new unemployment claims, less than 1 million. We'll take a look at where the country stands with overall unemployment. Thanks for joining us on Spectrum News 1. I'm Claudine Chalfant. Those stories and many more are just ahead. But first, let's see how Sally is impacting North Carolina. It's time for your Weather on the One's forecast.
Hello, I'm meteorologist Scott Dean with your Weather on the One's forecast. Certainly a rainy afternoon and also pockets of heavy rain with some flooding concerns as the remnants of Sally continue to push up through the area. This is what it looked like earlier this morning. Not a lot to see with all those raindrops on the camera lens, and that's going to be the theme for the rest of the afternoon as we're looking at what's left of Sally, the circulation pushing up through Georgia into western South Carolina. And you notice how the rain shield continues to push up into western North Carolina, and even a tornado threat with some of those storms down in South Carolina where the air is more unstable. But for us, it's not tornado concern, it's flash flooding. In fact, a flash flood watch out in effect all the way through early Friday afternoon from the Triad southward. We do think the heaviest rain will probably fall to the southeast of the area and over towards the triangle. As far as the rain is concerned, you can see pockets of heavy rain continuing to push up from south to north as we go through the evening into the overnight. It looks like the rain will start to taper off as we go later into Friday morning with maybe some lingering showers in the morning. So just one of those days you don't want to be outside. If you don't have to travel, don't do so because there will be the threat for some flooding. Certainly ponding of water on the roadways as the rain will continue with off and on heavy pockets of rain as we go through the evening hours as well. So it looks like the rain will start to taper off for tomorrow. We'll have more details coming up in about 10 minutes. Stay tuned.
As Sally continues to impact North Carolina, some areas are starting to see the water levels rise. Let's check in now live with Spectrum News 1 reporter Courtney Davis, who is in Cramerton. And Courtney, how is the river looking at this point?
Claudine, right now there's still steady rain happening, but it hasn't really been heavy in this area yet, but it has been raining for hours now. And as you can see behind me here at the South Fork River, the water is starting to get higher. In just the last hour or so, you can really start to see a little bit of a difference here with the river and just the levels of the water as this rain continues here in the Cramerton area. And we are standing right by the fire department in that area where they are known to have some flooding in this zone. Now take a look at some of this video that I took earlier. You can see how the water is starting to get towards the edges of the riverbank here and everything. And in February, this area rose pretty quickly by the river from heavy rain as well, causing parking lots to flood and some businesses to get water in the basement. And with all of the heavy rainfall continuing throughout the day, people in Cramerton say it's definitely something that they're going to be keeping an eye on to see how high this water level gets.
I think flooding might be an issue, yeah. I mean, definitely around here. I mean, we're so close to the river and everything. But I guess it's more like a wait and see if it's really as bad as they're saying it's gonna be and everything.
I'll just go off you.
And just to give you an idea of how much flooding happened in February, this whole area from the river here ended up flooding this entire yard area over here up to the parking lot. So this is definitely something that these businesses, there's a pharmacy there, a coffee shop there, and a church behind me. These businesses are definitely going to be keeping an eye on this and these updated conditions throughout the afternoon. And we will continue to have updates for you here on Spectrum News 1. Reporting in Cramerton, Courtney Davis, Claudine, back to you.
All right, Courtney, thank you. 860,000 people filed new unemployment claims last week. That's down slightly from the week before. 12.6 million people are currently collecting benefits. It's also a decrease, but the numbers are still above where they were before the pandemic started many, many months ago. Well, you have fewer than 2 weeks left to complete this year's 2020 census. North Carolina continues to lag behind other states in this important once-in-a-decade count. Right now, we'll check in with our Washington, D.C. Bureau reporter Kevin Fry. He actually spoke with an official at the Census Bureau to file this report for us. Kevin.
One cannot understate the importance of this count. Not only does it help determine how to split up roughly $1.5 trillion in federal spending, it also will influence whether or not North Carolina picks up an additional congressional seat. So far, North Carolina continues to lag in terms of participation. The latest data showing only 88.5% of the state's housing units have been accounted for, putting North Carolina among the bottom 10 states in terms of response. The national enumeration rate, by the way, is 93%. Tim Olson, the Associate Director of Field Operations at the U.S. Census Bureau, says they currently have more than 3,000 workers in the field in North Carolina, knocking on doors, checking in on the roughly 4 out of 10 households that did not respond on their own.
People in North Carolina are generally pretty open to a census worker's visit. There's something about the population. They open the door.
The census has at times over the past year been at the center of political controversy. At one point, the Trump administration unsuccessfully tried to add a citizenship question to the survey. While that move was blocked by the courts, it sparked concern in the Latino community. In recent weeks, more confusion as the Bureau announced they would wrap up the count a month earlier than previously indicated, leading to concerns of an undercount. How do you ensure that the public trusts these numbers and trusts that this is done fairly and correctly at the end of the day?
You know, the people running the census are career civil servants. You know, there's certainly politics around us in every administration, but we are driving to a complete count of all persons, regardless of status, regardless of citizenship.
Olson also stressed that your answers to census questions are confidential and cannot be used, for example, for law enforcement purposes. There is still time to complete the survey. The deadline is September 30th. To avoid having someone knock on your door, you can complete the survey online, over the phone, or mail in the form. In Washington, Kevin Fry, Spectrum News 1.
All right, Kevin, thank you. The UNC School of the Arts recently named a new executive vice chancellor and provost, and he brings plenty of experience. Patrick Sims served as the chief diversity officer for several years at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. In today's Voices for Change, he talks about how he channels his emotions into action to better serve his students.
How I ended up being sort of an academia or an artist, in some ways I feel like those were experiences that chose me. I didn't really choose them. Growing up, I really wanted to be sort of a professional athlete, but somewhere along the way I took a high school drama class, and the bug bit, and the rest is history. Fortunately, I had a very supportive mother and father who said basically, do whatever makes you happy, baby. And so I did what makes me happy, so I pursued my interest in theater. Many of those same skills that I was deploying back in high school, in college, and grad school are the same skill sets and tools I use today as an administrator and doing the good work that we're doing here at UNCSA. As an African-American young man, growing up on the south side of Chicago, I saw a lot of the gentrification that was happening. The neighborhood that we moved into when I was, I think, about 5th or 6th grade, where we're the first black family on the block. I go to a school where I'm now one of 3 African-American boys. That was eye-opening for us. And the day we moved in, I didn't know this at the time, but the day we moved in, the next door neighbor, who happened to be the president of the Riverdale Improvement Association, basically told my mom that we weren't welcome. If you can imagine, a lot of what's happening right now with Black Lives Matter, the most recent challenges that we see still in the state that I'm just coming from, Wisconsin, Kenosha, Wisconsin, those things are real. And you know, for me, to keep from having that kind of anger that we're seeing manifesting itself nationwide, in some instances across the globe, there's a certain amount of detachment that you have to do, right? That I have to do to stay sane. And that comes at a cost, because you start to become desensitized and you're no longer quite feeling the things that affirm your humanity. And so you have to hit reset in that area and make sure that, the right to breathe, that we can take that for granted. But if you look like me, you have to think twice about it. And you have to make sure that you present a certain way, that people don't view you as a threat, because the minute you're a threat, you're that close to being 6 feet underground. So reaching a space where we get to own our inner truths, whether it's someone who's black and tired of being viewed as a threat and tired of the challenges that we're experiencing in our penal system and the challenges we have with law enforcement. These are all challenges that we have to think through, and seeing the students today wrestle with those challenges, they aren't limited by the conventions or the constraints, right? They bring fresh eyes to it, and they have fresh expectations, and they're always going to challenge us. And so the onus is on the quote-unquote adults to be responsive to the challenge.
We would love to have your voice in this conversation as well. If you know someone who is a voice for change, tell us about them on our website, SpectrumLocalNews.com. Click on the Around tab. You'll find a link for Voices for Change, then the submission form for you to fill out. We are already seeing some wet weather from Sally, but as afternoon progresses, we want to see what the weather is like in your area. So if you feel like it, send us a picture and video to Spectrum News 1 North Carolina on Facebook. We want to see what it's like all across the state. But meanwhile, let's go to the Weather on the One's Forecast Center to get your current conditions in your area.
Hello, I'm meteorologist Scott Dean with your Weather on the One's forecast. We continue to watch the remnants of Sally move through the area with pockets of heavy rain. That's going to be the theme for the rest of the afternoon. Going back several hours, you can see how the rain is continuing to expand in coverage and intensity as we're looking at pockets of moderate to heavy rain that are pushing up from South Carolina up into the Sandhills, and that continues to lift off to the north. You can see the circulation associated with Sally, and even some thunderstorms that have been showing some signs of rotation where there have been some tornado warnings down in South Carolina. Looks like the tornado threat will head off towards our south and east, and we're mainly going to be concerned with flooding rain. So that's why the National Weather Service has a flash flood watch for all of the area from the Triad on southward, and this is in effect through tonight into Friday morning, even into the early afternoon. I do think the threat will start to subside as we go into tomorrow morning, but certainly one of those situations you want to keep weather aware and get to higher ground, especially if you live in one of those flood-prone areas as the water could rise rapidly. You never want to drive through water. It only takes about 2 feet of rapidly moving water across a roadway to cause the car to be lifted and washed into a culvert, and that's where a lot of flash flood fatalities occur. So stay tuned, and we will keep you informed. Make sure you download our weather app. All right, looking at the rainfall totals here on the Futurecast model, showing some areas picking up 1, 2, possibly 3 inches of rain. The heaviest rain will be off to the east over towards the Triangle. Now, as we look at our Futurecast model here, here's the good stuff. It looks like the rain will continue this evening, and then things calm down on our Friday as temperatures under partly sunny skies will be in the 70s, and then we drop down into the 50s for lows as we start off Saturday morning. So once we get through this evening into tonight, looks like things will drastically improve with cooler temperatures down into the 60s starting on Saturday.
Like a lot of events this year, another one is going virtual. It is the Huntington's Disease Society of America Virtual Education Day. Just ahead on Spectrum News 1, we'll have an in-depth conversation with the chapter president about the disease and how you can get involved.